Okay, so now we're going to look at exercise 1-4. Now, when you pull out 1-4, it is going to have 3 questions on it, and we are going to look at these questions, and then we're going to answer these questions. Now, I want you to think about the first question. There is no right or wrong answer. However, you need to have an answer, and it needs to be something more than just sleeping or playing video games. You can be passionate about that, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a passion that you can equate into a business. So, really hard to find a business where you sleep all day. So, number 1, discuss one area about which you are passionate. Again, think of something that if push comes to shove, you had no job, career, you could start a business with this passion. It can be sewing, it can be cooking, it can be cleaning, it can be taking care of kids, it could be shopping. You will be surprised how many careers or how many businesses revolve around being a personal shopper. So what is something that you're passionate about? What is something that you enjoy doing? And I always like to have this as the starting point. If there was one thing that you could do every day for the rest of your life and not get paid for it, what would you enjoy doing every day? Number 2, what are problems you'd like to see solved or areas of needs related to this area? So maybe you live in a town that has no pizza shop or any Chinese food delivery. Maybe you're a great cook, but the problem is a lack of food. So that would be your problem. Don't get too specific. Just give me an overall problem. Maybe there's not enough daycare, or maybe there's the problem doesn't have to necessarily affect you, but a problem that you in your life have noticed being there. There is definitely a lack of child care in this area. So what are some problems you'd like to see solved or areas of need related to this area? Number 3, how could you make a business out of solving that problem? So let's go back into the child care. If you had to change this problem, how could you turn that into a business? Opening up your own babysitter service, opening up a daycare during basketball games or something in the school. So I want you to kind of think about what you can turn into a business. We are going to watch a TED Talk. So as you're thinking about those quick 3 questions, I want you to look at Cameron's TED Talk about let's raise kids to be entrepreneurs.
I would be willing to bet that I'm the dumbest guy in the room because I couldn't get through school. I struggled with school. But what I knew at a very early age was that I loved money and I loved business and I loved this entrepreneurial thing. And I was raised to be an entrepreneur. And what I've been really passionate about ever since, and I've never spoken about this ever until now. So this is the first time anyone's ever heard it except my wife 3 days ago. She said, "What are you talking about?" And I told her, is that I think we miss an opportunity to find these kids who have the entrepreneurial traits and to groom them or show them that being an entrepreneur is actually a cool thing. It's not something that is a bad thing and is vilified, which is what happens in a lot of society. Kids, when we grow up, have dreams, and we have passions, and we have visions, and somehow we get those things crushed, and we get told that we need to study harder or be more focused or get a tutor. And my parents got me a tutor in French, and I still suck in French. 2 years ago, I was the highest rated lecturer at MIT's Entrepreneurial Masters program, and it was a speaking event in front of groups of entrepreneurs from around the world. When I was in grade 2, I won a citywide speaking competition, but nobody had ever said, "Hey, this kid's a good speaker. He can't focus, but he loves walking around and getting people energized." No one had said, "Get him a coach in speaking." They said, "Get me a tutor in what I suck at." So as kids show these traits, and we need to start looking for them, I think we should be raising kids to be entrepreneurs instead of lawyers. And unfortunately, the school system is grooming this world to say, "Hey, let's be a lawyer, or let's be a doctor." And we're missing that opportunity because no one ever says, "Hey, be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are people, because we have a lot of them in this room, who have these ideas and these passions or see these needs in the world, and we decide to stand up and do it. And we put everything on the line to make that stuff happen. And we have the ability to get those groups of people around us and want to kind of build that dream with us. And I think if we could get kids to embrace the idea at a young age of being entrepreneurial, we could change everything in the world that's a problem today. Every problem that's out there, somebody has the idea for, and as a young kid, nobody can say it can't happen because you're too dumb to realize that you couldn't figure it out. I think we have an obligation as parents and a society to start teaching our kids to fish instead of giving them the fish. The old parable, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man a fish, you feed him for a lifetime. If we can teach our kids to become entrepreneurial, the ones that show those traits to be, like we teach the ones who have science gifts to go on in science. What about if we saw the ones who had entrepreneurial traits and taught them to be entrepreneurs? We could actually have all these kids spreading businesses instead of waiting for government handouts. What we do is we sit and we teach our kids all the things they shouldn't do. Don't hit, don't bite, don't swear. Right now we teach our kids to go after really good jobs. You know, the school system teaches them to go after things like being a doctor and being a lawyer and being an accountant and a dentist and a teacher and a pilot. And the media says that it's really cool if we could go out and be a model or a singer or sports hero like Luongo Crosby. Our MBA programs do not teach kids to be entrepreneurs. The reason that I avoided an MBA program, other than the fact that I couldn't get into any because I had a 61% average out of high school and then 61% average at the only school in Canada that accepted me, Carleton. But our MBA programs don't teach kids to be entrepreneurs. They teach them to go work in corporations. So who's starting these companies? It's these random few people. Even in popular literature, the only book I've ever found, and this should be on all of your reading lists, the only book I've ever found that makes the entrepreneur into the hero is Atlas Shrugged. Everything else in the world tends to look at entrepreneurs and say that we're bad people. I look at even my family. Both my grandfathers were entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. Both my brother and sister and I, all three of us own companies as well. And we all decided to start these things because it's really the only place we fit. We didn't fit in the normal work. We couldn't work for somebody else because we're too stubborn and we have all these other traits. But kids could be entrepreneurs as well. I'm a big part of a couple organizations globally called the Entrepreneurs Organization and the Young Presidents Organization. I just came back from speaking in Barcelona at the YPO Global Conference. And everyone that I met over there who was an entrepreneur struggled with school. I have 18 out of the 19 signs of attention deficit disorder diagnosed, so this thing right here is freaking me out.
Your snacks?
It's probably why I'm a little bit panicked right now, is other than all the caffeine that I've had and the sugar, but like this is like really creepy for an entrepreneur. Attention deficit disorder, bipolar disorder. Do you know that bipolar disorder is nicknamed the CEO disease? Ted Turner's got it, Steve Jobs has it. All three of the founders of Netscape had it. I could go on and on. The kids, you can see these signs in kids, and what we're doing is we're giving them Ritalin and saying, don't be an entrepreneurial type, fit into this other system and try to become a student. Sorry, entrepreneurs aren't students. We fast track, we figure out the game. I stole essays, I cheated on exams, I hired kids to do my accounting assignments in university for 13 consecutive assignments. But like as an entrepreneur, you don't do accounting, you hire accountants. So I just figured that out earlier. At least I can admit I cheated in university. Most of you won't. I'm also quoted, weirdly, and I told the person who wrote the textbook, I'm now quoted in that exact same university textbook in every Canadian university and college studies in managerial accounting. I'm chapter 8. I open up chapter 8 talking about budgeting. And I told the author after they did my interview that I cheated in that same course and she thought it was too funny to not include it anyway. But kids, you can see these signs in them. The definition of an entrepreneur is a person who organizes, operates, and assumes the risk of a business venture. That doesn't mean you have to go to an MBA program. It doesn't mean you have to get through school. It just means that those few things have to feel right in your gut. And we've heard those things about, is it nurture or is it nature, right? Is it thing one or thing two? What is it? Well, I don't think it's either. I think it can be both. I was groomed as an entrepreneur. When I was growing up as a young kid, I had no choice because I was taught at a very early young age when my dad realized I wasn't going to fit into everything else that was being taught to me in school, that he could teach me to figure out business at an early age. He groomed us, the three of us, to hate the thought of having a job and to love the fact of creating companies that we can employ other people. My first little business venture, I was 7 years old. I was in Winnipeg, and I was lying in my bedroom with one of those long extension cords, and I was calling all of the dry cleaners in Winnipeg to find out how much would the dry cleaners pay me for coat hangers. My mom came into the room, and she said, where are you going to get the coat hangers to sell to the dry cleaners? And I said, let's go and look in the basement. And we went down to the basement, and I opened up this cupboard, and there was about 1,000 coat hangers that I'd collected, because when I told her I was going out to play with the kids, I was going door to door in the neighborhood to collect coat hangers to put in the basement to sell, because I saw her a few weeks before that you could get paid. They used to pay you 2 cents per coat hanger. So I was just like, well, there's all kinds of coat hangers, and so I'll just go get them. And I knew she wouldn't want me to go get them, so I just did it anyway. But and I learned that you could actually negotiate with people. This one person offered me 3 cents, and I got him up to 3.5. I even knew at a 7-year-old age that I could actually get a fractional percent of a cent, and people would pay that because it multiplied up. At 7 years old, I figured out I got 3.5 cents for 1,000 coat hangers. I sold license plate protectors door to door. My dad actually made me go find someone who would sell me these things at wholesale, and at 9 years old, I walked around in the city of Sudbury selling license plate protectors door to door to houses. And I remember this one customer so vividly, because I also did some other stuff with these clients. I sold newspapers, and he wouldn't buy a newspaper from me ever, but I was convinced I was going to get him to buy a license plate protector. And he's like, well, we don't need one. And I said, but you've got 2 cars. Remember, I'm 9 years old. I'm like, but you have 2 cars and they don't have license plate protectors. And I said, I know. And I said, and this car here's got one license plate that's all crumpled up. And he said, yes, that's my wife's car. And I said, why don't we just test one on the front of your wife's car and see if it lasts longer? So I knew there were 2 cars with 2 license plates on each. If I couldn't sell all 4, I could at least get 1. I learned that at a young age. I did comic book arbitrage. When I was about 10 years old, I sold comic books at our cottage on Georgian Bay. And I would go biking up to the end of the beach and buy all the comics from the poor kids, and then I would go back to the other end of the beach and sell them to the rich kids. But it was obvious to me, right? Buy low, sell high. You've got this demand over here that has money. Don't try to sell to the poor kids. They don't have cash. The rich people do. Go get some. So that's obvious, right? It's like a recession. So there's a recession. There's still $13 trillion circulating in the U.S. economy. Go get some of that. And I learned that at a young age. I also learned, don't reveal your source, because I got beat up after about 4 weeks of doing this because one of the rich kids found out where I was buying my comics from. And he didn't like the fact he was paying a lot more. I was forced to get a paper route at 10 years old. I didn't really want a paper route, but at 10, my dad said, that's going to be your next business. So not only would he get me 1, but I had to get 2, and then he wanted me to hire someone to deliver half the papers, which I did, and then I realized that collecting tips was where you made all the money. So I would collect the tips and get payment. So I would go and collect for all the papers. He could just deliver them, because then I realized I could make money. By this point, I was definitely not going to be an employee. My dad owned an automotive and industrial repair shop, and he had all these old automotive parts lying around, and they had this old brass and copper. And so I asked him what he did with it, and he said he just throws it out. And I said, but wouldn't somebody pay you for that? And he goes, maybe. Remember, at 10 years old, so 34 years ago, I saw opportunity in this stuff. I saw there was money in garbage, and I was actually collecting it from all the automotive shops in the area on my bicycle, and then my dad would drive me on Saturdays to a scrap metal recycler where I got paid. And I thought that was kind of cool. Strangely enough, like 30 years later, we're building 1-800-GOT-JUNK, making money off that too. I built these little pin cushions when I was 11 years old in Cubs, and we made these pin cushions for our moms for Mother's Day. And you made these pin cushions out of wooden clothespins. So we used to hang clothes on clotheslines outside. And you'd make these chairs, and then I had these little pillows that I would sew up, and you could stuff pins in them, and because people used to sew and they needed a pin cushion. So but what I realized was that you had to have options. So I actually spray painted a whole bunch of them brown, and then when I went to the door, it wasn't, do you want to buy one? It was like, which color would you like? Like, I'm 10 years old, you're not going to say no to me. And especially if you have 2 options, you have the brown one or the clear one. So I learned that lesson at a young age. I learned that manual labor really sucks. Right? Like, cutting lawns is brutal. But because I had to cut lawns all summer for all of our neighbors and get paid to do that, I realized that recurring revenue from one client is amazing. But if I land this client once and every week I get paid by that person, that's way better than trying to sell one clothespin thing to one person, because you can't sell them more. So I love that recurring revenue model I started to learn at a young age. Remember, I was being groomed to do this. I was not allowed to have jobs. I would caddy. I'd go to the golf course and caddy for people, but I realized there was this one hill on our golf course, the 13th hole, that had this huge hill, and people could never get their bags up it. So I would sit there with a lawn chair and just carry up all the people who didn't have caddies. I would carry their golf bags up to the top, and they'd pay me $1. Meanwhile, my friends were working for 5 hours to haul some guy's bag around and get paid $10. I'm like, that's stupid, because you have to work for 5 hours. That doesn't make any sense. You just figure out a way to make more money faster. Every week, I would go to the corner store and buy all these pops, and I would go up and deliver them to these 70-year-old women playing bridge. And they'd give me their orders for the following week, and then I would just deliver pop, and I just charged twice. And I had this captured market. You didn't need contracts. You just needed to have a supply and demand, and this audience who bought into you. These women weren't going to go to anybody else because they